Okay, so here's an example of a table using data that sort of lends itself to a table, and I think it illustrates very well a lot of the attributes that I talked about in the table basics part of this video. So I'm displaying here the teams that are in the National Football League. There are 32 teams in the National Football League. I'm only doing half of them here so that I can keep the code and the table all within the screen. But there are 32 teams in the National Football League. It's divided into two conferences, 16 teams in each conference, and each conference is divided into four divisions. You have a north, south, east, and west division in each conference, and so you have four teams in each conference, in each division. So that divides itself very nicely to be in a data, in a table. So let's just go through line by line and see what each line contributes here. So it's just a further illustration of the basics that I did in the last video. So once again, here on line 8, there's the table tag with the border attribute, and the reason I put the border attribute in there is so that we could see the divisions. Once again, we would do normally do this in the CSS part in a separate file, but I'm putting this here just to make it clear what we're doing with the table. On line 9, I put a caption. As you can see, that caption's over here, half of the current NFL teams. Coming here on line 11, as you can see, I needed to put sort of a subheading, a subgrouping, and so this is how I'm dividing the teams into conferences. And so this particular header tag spans 6 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, these 6 columns here. So you can see I use the column span in my table header tag over here, and I indicate that I'm spanning 6 columns, and I put in the American Football Conference. And then there are the 6 columns that I want to put headers for, so I come down here on line 12, and I put those column headings in there, division, city, mascot, wins, losses, ties, and so that's what goes across there. Now, you'll notice here at the beginning of each grouping of 4, I want to sort of group those rows into the divisions. And so what I do here on line 14 is I put a row in, and on that row, and this is what's a little tricky here, this header here, this header for north, spans 4 rows. And so what I do here is I say here the table header spans for north, spans 4 rows. Then I put in the information for the first division on that row. And so it just so happens that on the first one here, it's going to have this additional table header. And that's how, if you looked here, the data for this table division, the one for the city, the one for the mascot, the wins, the losses, and the ties. Okay, so that particular row has one more table header than the ones that follow, which they only contain the information for each team in terms of its city, its mascot, and its wins, losses, and ties. So that's a little bit confusing, but you get used to it after a while. So that's how I was able to put this, because it's going to span all 4 of those rows. That's how I was able to put this row header, if you will. These are column headers, if you're going to call this a row header. I'm using the row span, and that's how I was able to put that there to group these 4 teams together because they're all in the same division. And then I did the same thing here on line 19 for the Southern Division in that conference. And then I come back on line 24, and now I use a row that spans all 6 columns again, and that indicates that the National Football Conference, I'm going to do those 16 teams, which here I only did 8. And then I put the row headers back in, and then I do the same thing here that I did with the Northern Division up top. I put the teams in the Northern Division in this conference here, and then line 32, the Southern Division teams. This New Orleans is wrapped there, so if I put that a little bit over it, then you can see I didn't do anything to do that. That was the cell wrapping. And the cells will wrap by themselves. And then I close out the table and close out the body in HTML. And so this is an illustration of how to use how to use the different attributes and the different tags of the table to display data in a very well formatted, easy to read way.